Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about the differences between the MRTP Act of 1970 and the Competition Act of 2002. We all know that the MRTP Act was repealed. Repealed means it was removed, and then in place of the MRTP Act we had the Competition Act of 2002. So now let's look into the main differences between these two acts. The MRTP Act, though it is the first competition law which was enacted in India in the year 1970, and the primary objective of the MRTP Act was to prevent the concentration of economic power or wealth in the hands of a few people. Now basically during the era of 1970s and all, it was also called as informally called as a license Rajara, which means that private enterprises had to obtain licenses and register themselves before starting establishing businesses. And generally what happened is after independence, the concentration of wealth in the people was very widely inequitable. Only few people had wealth or wealth in the hands, and therefore these people established big business houses, whereas the other masses were left without much wealth in their hands. And moreover, during this era, just before the MRTP Act was enacted, the government mostly favored only the establishment of public sector enterprises in the country. So, because of all these practices, the MRTP Act was enacted so that it could prevent the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few business houses. Whereas on the other hand, the Competition Act was an act which was aimed at promoting healthy competition in industries and preventing anti-competitive practices. Then the MRTP Act is reformatory in nature, in the sense that if the business houses do not comply with the provisions of the MRTP Act, they were not many punishments was disclosed under the MRTP Act. Whereas on the other hand, under the Competition Act, if the business houses do not follow the provisions of the Competition Act of 2002, then they are liable to various penalties, which could be both imprisonment as well as payment of fines. On the other hand, the MRTP Act basically it regarded the dominance of a firm in terms of size itself. Dominance of a firm is determined by its size. Like if it is a big firm in every industry, we would have certain market leaders. So whichever was the market leader, and if that market leader enjoyed a dominant position, means compared to the other competitors it had a very superior position, then such a firm was considered as enjoying a position of dominance. Whereas on the other hand, the Competition Act emphasized that the dominance of a firm, or the growth, or the existence of a big enterprise business house in an industry is not the problem. But if the business enterprise misuses its position to practices activities like predatory pricing, or prevents the entry of other new entrants, then the dominance of a firm should be regarded as illegal. Next, the MRTP Act focuses basically on the interests of the consumers. Like basically, this act was enacted to make sure that the customers were given good quality goods, and restrictive trade practices and unfair trade practices like hoarding, black marketing, and all was avoided. Now, hoarding is a practice where the producers artificially try to increase the price of the goods. So, in order to increase the price of the goods, the producers will try to stop the supply of the goods for a temporary period, and then once the prices rise because of the inadequate supply, then the goods are released in the market. Okay, so basically MRTP Act focused on protecting the customers against such unfair trade practices. Whereas on the other hand, the Competition Act focuses on the interests of the public at large. So basically the Competition Act emphasizes how healthy competition is beneficial not only for the customers to get good quality products at good prices and improve the standard of living, but also healthy competition is essential for the growth of the economy itself. Further, the MRTP Act had listed out 14 offences which are against the principle of natural justice. Like once I said, a firm enjoying a dominant position itself was considered as an offense. But then in practicality, if we see that, a firm enjoying a dominant position and using the dominant position for causing loss to the others minor firms, then it should be considered as an offense. So the Competition Act recognized that certain offences cannot be deemed as against the principle of natural justice. Therefore, from 14, the Competition Act recognized only 4 offences which are against the principle of natural justice. Further, the MRTP Act did not provide for the formation of a separate fund in order to ensure that where an organization is set up to promote its to ensure that the provisions of the MRTP Act are followed. Whereas under the Competition Act, we have a Competition Commission of India, we had a Competition Appellate Tribunal, and also a separate fund was created in order to ensure that all the provisions of the Competition Act of 2002 are implemented. Further, like I just said, that any entity having the status of a dominant position itself is considered as bad. But this was a very wrong notion under the MRTP Act, whereas the Competition Act has overcome this wrong notion and said that only if the dominant a business house which has a dominant position uses its dominant position for exploiting the customers or for exploiting the new entrants, then the dominant position should be considered as illegal or bad. Otherwise, it is fair enough for any firm to become a market leader.